As soon as I woke up this morning, I knew something strange and different happened. I could feel it on my head. I could feel it deep down in the substrata. I didn't know exactly what it was, but one of the first indications that I think we had a major Mandela shift was just the tenor and the tone of some of the tweets that I've was able to see on my feed. You know, it's strange. You sort of see the subtext of everything around you. You know, it's sort of like if you listen to someone who's a motivational speaker or something like that. Don't listen to the actual words they're telling you. Listen to the words that they emphasize and the words that they kind of hold back on. And the words that they're emphasizing, those are words that are going to guide you to pay them and to stick around and to stay around long enough for the spell. Like they're going to tell you to be quiet or to give them money, or it's just this low level kind of magic thing going on. And that's with a C. Anyway, and then I started, I don't know this, ME channel that well, but I've watched it a couple times, and I certainly don't know, the channel is Scott Harrison, and I've watched his work a couple of times, and I certainly don't know the person, that he's talking about, and I'll leave the link to his channel, and it's Red Alert Mandela Effect Community. They're coming for you and your kids. So normally I wouldn't publish something like that with a title like that, but what I also understand is that there's the universe is kind of, it gives you a meta language, you know, and this is the first video I looked at this morning. So I understood immediately that whenever you come across something like this, that is that startling, and I woke up at 4 a.m. and watched this video, you realize that the sort of tone of the day had been set. And sure enough, it was 2 or 3 other videos into it, I got to another channel called Jason Maggard. I just discovered him, and I'll send that link in here, and it's the Mandela Effect in high school. And again, I'm not vouching for any of these channels. I'm just saying this is what I saw, and I'm going to leave the links for you too, so you can sort of start to understand a theme that started to develop. And what he was showing me was that in his daughter's AP psychology class in high school, they included, but didn't mention, the Mandela Effect. They included examples of the Mandela Effect, and indeed they had a paper that they had to, sort of a poll that they had to take of things that you remember and brands and labels that you remember, like the Monopoly guy. But they never mentioned the Mandela Effect. But it was in reference to memory and things of that nature. Also, too, I noticed that the sort of waves that I get in comments on this channel, that tells me kind of where we're at in terms of shifts, pre-shifts, post-shifts. I think we had a pretty major shift, maybe last night. I'm not entirely sure what it's all about yet, but I know we also got into a conversation about Ed McMahon, and the thing about it was, I'll send another link in here about the American Family Publishers. And there was a link about that, and we had a discussion with some of the crew I run with on Twitter. Obviously, Asian Smith and Billy and Chick and a few other people that I hang out with on Twitter, and we got to talking about this. And then later in the day, we found some clips of CNN during Ed McMahon's memorial. They were talking about him working for Publishers Clearinghouse. But one of the things I noticed about this particular video, again, I try to not look at anything around me as very literal anymore. You see immediately with the video, they're talking in the comments section about the Mandela Effect, and you can see the comments being massaged. Like from this person's Shane, it said, "For some reason, I thought the American Family was a life insurance policy he sold that covered for you for $1, $2, or $10 million to ensure your loved ones are taken care of once you're gone. And that Publishers Clearinghouse was the one where he showed up with the giant check and balloons. I guess I got it backwards." So it's really interesting, and there's more and more like that. So you see this tone of this sort of subtle I can just sense it. They're trying to change the course of the ship. You know, always the infamous quote, "they." They're trying to change the course of this thing. But it's too big and it's too real. And like this Vin D, another thanks, this cleared up the mystery, and for anyone who still doesn't believe it, they're just going by mistaken memory. PCH has a spokesperson, an old guy like Ed, Dick Clark maybe, so it's easy to see how the two got mixed up. Also, Ed made some TV appearances delivering big checks to people's doors. And it's like, you can tell that these are, puppet accounts, and if they're, even if they're not, these are puppet answers. These are derived answers, and they're so obvious. They're not even very good, you know, that the way in which they were delivered and they were handled. And of course, this is coming off of the ideas that I was playing around with in the last couple of days, you know, talking about Ed McMahon being one of the first saints of the Mandela Effect. If we look at it in terms of a spiritual experience, obviously Mandela would have to be something much bigger, but certainly Ed McMahon and probably Sally Fields, whatever, would certainly be probably saints, first saints, you know what I mean, in terms of that kind of pyramid system that's created. But you just go through these comments and you can tell they're between that, the red alert, and then this Mandela Effect in high school, and AP psychology, you can just sense that something changed overnight and that they're really trying to put the screws to the ME community. Or maybe it's just me, but it's just, you know, I try to put together sort of all the metadata that's out there, because it's not literally what they're saying to you. You've got to understand that your subconscious works in order of symbols and in order of patterns. And the pattern I'm seeing here is one of stress and of friction on the community as a whole, and Ed McMahon in particular. And that's been one that I've pointed out as being especially important because what? Because there's so much residue that I've put out, and I'll send that as well too. The residue where, like, CNN mentioned that he worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. That over and over again, people thought he worked for Publishers Clearinghouse, and it's like the people who are writing these comments. I mean, you know, get better writers. These comments are so canned. You know, they're not. You know, I know what a real. You know, I've gotten thousands and thousands of comments on my channel. And I know what a real comment is and what's a bot or somebody who's playing a role, who's been hired to sort of, you know, slowly change the course of the ship. And just by including a Mandela Effect handout for a psychology AP class and not include the fact that it's a Mandela Effect and to kind of slip that in under the radar, it seems pretty sneaky to do to the students. Also, too, I'm getting strange questions from people that I don't normally get. I'm also getting strange. I've had to block my first follower, who was thinking I was Pompo or something like that, and I'm not entirely sure if that was some kind of code word or something I've heard. My voice seems to be confused with a plethora of pretty much almost everyone on the planet. My voice has been confused with, and it's just, you know, things have seemed to have ramped up. And once I drop the R word, like religion, because that sort of takes it and it puts it in a whole other category. And what it can do is it can kind of sort of codify a series of rules that we all want to go for. And immediately I'm starting to feel the friction of the words that I chose. And they're coming at me in sort of the, in an invisible metaphor, but nonetheless I can read the text. It's like what W.D. Gann talked about when he used Fibonacci sequence numbers in order to predict what's happening in the stock market. You can sort of do the same thing with linguistics as well. And because we are especially vulnerable because we don't have an empire of our own in terms of linguistics when it comes to the Mandela Effect, we're sort of left trying to read the tea leaves and understand exactly what's going on now. Also, too, I've been asked to push strange other things that aren't Mandela related. They're more recent news related, and I don't respond well to those kinds of queries, because when I'm not a political person, this channel's not going to be political. It's strictly metaphysical, and it's the only kind of detective work this Hardy Boy is going to do as anything with the Mandela Effect, and it's primarily, my introspective work that I do in relation to the Mandela Effect. Obviously, I say over and over again, one day I would love to branch off into just straight up paranormal or straight up occult or things like that. But obviously for now, while we still have these kinds of strange things happening, regardless if they're trending on YouTube or not, which I don't care, I'm going to still have to look at the world through this lens. And so I'm going to leave all of these links down below for everyone. And, I wanted to talk about and kind of explore in an interesting speech pattern the idea of creating this sort of ethereal hierarchy in terms of who our patron saints are going to be, and not in a literal sense, but most people, even if you can tell them literal that this is not literal, they're still going to take it literally. And even though what I've told you just now, that it'll somehow be twisted, over and over again. Again, I've talked a million times about the We Died in 2012 series and why I think it's perfect and provocative and exactly what you need in terms of, provocation of people, in terms of their understanding their role in life, death, and everything in between. And yet I'm still getting comments saying, well, I certainly don't feel dead. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. So, anyway, that's all I have for now, and I can assure you, my voice is my own. I don't know who Dave is. I don't know who Pompo is. I don't know who any of these people are. There was an interesting suggestion made about, I think Jeremy made it for me, about what I wanted to do was find an item, and this is when this is all kicked up. I wanted to find a physical item, like a check actually made out from Ed McMahon. So if anybody knows or, knows a PCH, a Publishers Clearinghouse recipient that ended up keeping the check, or if you worked for a studio or whatever and you have some sort of residue, some physical residue, please in some capacity contact me about that. I'd love to see that, and I'd love to have that and to show that to people. And in this own way, we can sort of show that this was real, that this was something. And I think Jeremy mentioned something about it being like the ultimate way in which you could bridge that kind of energy from one version or one dimension of reality to the next. I mean, this is some real high level stuff here. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. I just wanted to get this off my chest. So by the way, we still have THC that's coming out hopefully sometime soon, so keep a lookout for that. And still have the lizard ritual and the lost and found bin this weekend. So thanks everybody.